Welcome to our Digital Privacy, Safety, and Security Lunch and Learn webinar with Rob Residori from Bright Bytes. This is a really important webinar because this is the work that is going to be coming down the pike soon. And we have an opportunity to partner with Bright Bytes and their partner, I Keep Safe, as well to get the work started. And if we choose to do that, we will definitely be ahead of the ball game for the state of Wisconsin for sure, but it's definitely there's lots of people around the country that are diving into this work, and Rob will tell you all about that. So I am here to sort of support us as a region in moving forward and supporting you in the district in whatever way I can. And Rob is here to tell us the best and most efficient way to move forward with this work. So Rob, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then if you need me to do anything else, let me know. I also will be manning the chat, so if you have questions, definitely pop them into the chat and we'll try to get those answered. At the end, we'll do question and answer and hope to get all of your questions answered at that time. All right, Rob, take us away.
Sure, will do. Thanks, Missy. I appreciate getting things started and having your support organizing this. This is an exciting opportunity. I just kind of want to share with you some of the information and research that we've been doing around this space and talk to you about the opportunity that's kind of on the table. So as much as we can keep this conversational, that would be great. I think there certainly will be a time for me to kind of share the information about this, but as we're going, feel free to stop in and just kind of pause me and either direct a question or comment to the chat room, raise your hand, whatever you think makes sense, and we'll kind of take questions on the fly. And then we'll also have a section at the end to just have a little Q&A and really unpack some of the things that I shared. Just very briefly about myself, because I don't think I've met all of you. My name is Rob Residori, and I work with Bright Bytes, have been for about 2.5 years. Prior to that was in Chicago Public Schools, began as a classroom teacher, then became a little more on the administrative side, and ultimately was in the ed tech department as the district ed tech manager and a former customer of Bright Bytes. And I have to tell you, so I used the technology and learning module, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think most of you are somewhat familiar with that. Had this module been out at that time, it would have been game-changing for me. And just really kind of getting a handle on some of these conversations is really key. And what it is that we're talking about is really going to follow the same path that Bright Bytes has as its organizational tenets, if you will. So it's really, for all the work that we do, it's divided up into 3 different parts. First and foremost, we take a look at what does the research say about a given topic in education. And we've built different modules that address different pieces within education. So one of them that you're familiar with is taking a look at the technology and what is its impact on the classroom? How is it transforming teaching, and what is its impact on learning? We also have another module that takes a look at leadership. So we've built that with another research organization, McCrell. What are the key characteristics of leadership? We have one that's using predictive analytics to identify at-risk students and makes recommendations for interventions. But all of these different solutions take the approach of what does best practice and research say? And then from there, how do we package this information to folks like yourself that really need to use this to make better decisions? And we do that through, first and foremost, creating a framework that helps kind of understand this information a little bit better. So I always use the analogy that we don't go to Walmart's warehouse to go shop. We go to their store because we know there where to find cosmetics and toiletries and all the different things based on the categories, because it helps us kind of look at that. And then we also have the online platform that helps us unpack that and interpret that information. And from the Bright Bytes standpoint, we help folks really dive into some of that work. And then the final part is those research-based recommendations. So what can we do about any of these given topics? How do we start to move the dial in this conversation? So to that end, these are these modules that we kind of briefly went through. What we're going to talk about today is the digital privacy one. So it's a new solution. And the impetus behind this is really to kind of take a look at some of the other parts that are going on behind the scenes, under the hood, if you will, when we talk about how we're shifting the classrooms to be more student-centered. So as an organization, Bright Bytes has really been helping folks take a look at what they're seeing in their classrooms. How are we as a system designing our classrooms to be much more student-centered, to be different, not just incrementally better, but really making that shift. And that takes a lot of work, and we're all really engaged, really as a nation, as a world, with integrating this technology. But then on the other side of this, we start to take a step back and say, if we're doing all this over here with the integration, what do we have to do on the other side to be sure that we're being safe and responsible with the information that we're sharing out, with the information that's coming back in? What are we doing as a system to really be safe and secure about all of the kind of moving parts as it relates to creating a healthy digital environment? And so there are a lot of technical solutions. There are a lot of, hey, I've got potential insecurities in my network or some kind of vulnerabilities in some of my systems. That's one aspect of it, but a major part of this whole conversation is really about how do we take a look at some of the human pieces of this, because security is only one part technical. The rest of it really is about what are those choices that we're making within the classroom, within the district. How are we messaging out what we're doing with student data, and how are we being sure that it's being used in the right, appropriate ways? And so it's really this balance. How do we protect the innovation that's happening within the district with also the behind the scenes, what we need to be doing as a system to make sure that we're being safe and appropriate? And that's why we've developed this module as a counterbalance of the technology and learning one. So hopefully you're all familiar with that technology and learning one, and I'm just going to assume that you are, and if you're not, please.
In 1 second.
Yeah.
So I'm going to interrupt just a second. So we at CESA 3 have the tech and learning module available for all of the schools that participate in the Teach grant through us. So I will be getting in touch with everyone's Bright Bytes champion to see who will be leading the way with getting that survey done. Some people did it last spring after the Teach grant information came out, and they got it done before the end of the year. And some of the districts pushed it off to the fall. At any rate, all of you can do it once a year or twice a year, and I am your point person for that. So it's getting time to do that data collection at this point if you haven't already done it, but there's lots of really great information in that module. And like Rob said, if he had had the digital privacy, safety, and security when he was in the field, I can tell you that when I was the principal at Schellsburg, I did have the technology and learning module, and it changed everything, which is why I prioritize that in our work in the technology and learning part of CESA. So that is coming out very soon, information about that. So thanks for letting me interrupt, Rob. Take me away.
Of course, thanks. And thank you for saying that, because, it is available for you right now. So you can get this going. But B, when I used it in the district, we went one-to-one with 60 schools, and to go to my CEO and say, this is what I think here and this is what I think there, just is not viable. We need data. We're a culture that is very data rich. It also is helping us really advocate for more resources to say, this is the research that's behind some of this. This is the why. And if as a district, you're in a position where you're helping to formulate that why within the district, why are we maybe going one-to-one? Why should we better or deeper integrate technology, further? Having the research citations and that action plan that's baked into the system and those recommendations is just invaluable. And we can help you build out supporting documents. So maybe you're looking to build a really actionable, visionary document of what maybe the expectations, if you will, within the classroom or schools can kind of look like, or helping the principals really drive that at the buildings. The system has a lot of recommendations, and then there's also conversations with us at Bright Bytes as well as Missy. So please, please, please follow up with her if you're not sure what it is that we're talking about here, or you just kind of want to take it to the next level. That's available. And so now we take a look at this other side with this newer solution. Because there's a lot of acronyms out there, right? There's a lot of new stuff that's hitting everybody's radars. And what is FERPA and what is CAPA and what do I do with all the kind of moving parts around managing with my third-party vendors? How do I really get ahead of some of these conversations before something bubbles up? I'm constantly having district conversations with districts, and they're saying, this happened down the street, or we've got a DDoS attack, or someone brought in, really inappropriate materials, or there's cyberbullying going on. We need to shore up our policies. We really need to talk about what we're doing to help educate. And this is really that kind of visual that I think spells it out. It's never going to be an end state. We're never, I don't think, as a system going to say, I'm done. I secured my system and I'm good to go, because there's constantly going to be new information that's coming out, and there's state laws, there's local policies. In fact, just since we've been working with iKeepSafe, I think there's been 11 different state level policies that have come out. Most recently in Colorado, iKeepSafe helped craft the legislation that says any new vendor that wants to work with a district, so maybe they've even worked with a district down the road, but if they're coming to you new, you have to go through this vetting process. And they've created the templates and whatnot to help kind of vet those. And there's going to be a pretty big library of kind of pre-selected types of vendors. And also our neighbors, I'm in Chicago, so really neighbors to all of us in Missouri, they've come out and done, I think, 7 or 8 different state level audits on a district's digital environment. And they dropped some pretty scathing reports that have outlined some of the gaps in the system. You can take a look at those. Those are publicly available, and I can send one out. And we looked back and said, if we had the framework in place that looks at these pieces, that district would be in a much, much better place. So how we go about this work is really helping navigate this conversation to help you figure out where you're strong, where your gaps might be, and how to bridge that gap. So if you've got some of those missing pieces, what you kind of do about that. Did I hear a question? I heard someone kind of hop in for a second.
Anybody have questions? Otherwise, I have something to add to that piece too.
Mm-hmm.
And question, feel free, I hear you. Okay, the piece that I want to add to that is something that, we talk about cyberbullying and, keeping our kids safe online, but that's not the only thing that we have to think about in regards to digital privacy, safety, and security. One of the things that happens all of the time that doesn't necessarily go through any checks, at least in my world it doesn't, and I'm almost certain in your world it doesn't, but it should, is teachers in the district who potentially sign up for freemium type products. And so their student data is in the freemium product, and they don't have a walled garden because there's not a district license, etc. But that student data is out there, and our teachers aren't necessarily aware of what happens to their Class Dojo data, even though they have an individual account for that teacher, but they're not really obliged to have certain safety precautions with that data also. And what happens if that data gets out into the world, and have they told the parents about what happens with that data or anything? So this is really important because there are so many other pieces to think about than cyberbullying. That's a major one, but that's not the only piece of privacy that we need to keep in mind. So I just want you to know that it needs to be a much bigger global discussion, and this module isn't necessarily meant for teachers or students. It's really meant for leadership to get a handle on what's going on. In one of the emails I sent you, I talked about so much of our technology comes with the cart before the horse. And I used to be ridiculed up one side and down the other at board meetings because I wanted to implement things. And so I was putting the cart before the horse. Well, technology is demanding that in some situations. This particular module is a way to get the horse back out in front of the cart. So I just want you to be aware of that, and that's my analogy of this particular module. So just one example of what we don't necessarily think about. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a great point. I kind of said this before. It's really about human security. It's a lot of the moving parts that we're not always aware of, and having the structure and the framework in place to really help you navigate that is a game changer. And again, I've heard a lot of folks just say, yeah, we're having these conversations, but I'm not sure where to start. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And so how this was built here, this solution with iKeepSafe, so they're a nonprofit out of California. And they've been involved in a lot of federal and local and state level policies, really about how do we build our systems to be safe and secure. And they kind of came to us with the issue of, we've got all this stuff, these resources, we don't have the ability to scale. We're also having conversations where sometimes it's a little bit after the fact, like, boy, this happened, now we've got a district or someone coming to us. So the goal of this is really to be much more proactive and to help you have a really comprehensive plan to say, you can step away from this and say that, you know, you've really taken a look pretty deeply at all of your systems. And this is not going to be just a tech director's job. This should not be. They may run point on some of this and be that conduit, but it really needs to start living within the rest of the district to kind of build through the fabric of the culture of what's happening there. Any questions? Someone that's on the phone, maybe. Okay, so good. So this is the framework that we've built out. The research has really shown that in order to have a healthy digital environment, there are 4 domains, if you will, that need to be addressed. And I said there are some technical pieces of this, but a lot of this is really built on what are those systems and structures that are in place within the district to make sure that these conversations are happening. So we'll kind of go through this and unpack this a little bit, and then we'll take a look at the platform and how things play out. But first and foremost, we're taking a look within the policies domain of, A, do you have as a district the correct policies, and are they being acted upon? Are they relevant? Are they current? What is the kind of the protocol on collecting student level data? Is the district being transparent about what it is and is not collecting? What happens when a teacher signs up for a freemium app? You know, when things are free, the people become the currency. We are the currency when we use Facebook, when we, Google, things like that for us, because they're collecting that data. What's happening with the student data, and do we know that? So also within the policies component is, how are we communicating outward about these various policies? What's happening within the district to say, this is how we are addressing X, Y, and Z. It's one thing to have some policies that kind of sit on a virtual shelf. It's another to say, this is what it means, here's the implications, and here's what you can do about that. So that's kind of the policies domain. It starts pretty, basic level with a lot of the foundational components. But then from there, starts to segue into the programmatic aspects. So we do know pretty strongly about the digital citizenship and understanding the implications of what it means to be safe and secure online as a student. But what does it mean for a teacher? What does it mean maybe for a board member, the administrators within our district, the parents, the guardians of the students, the community members, law enforcement, social services? So there are a lot of implications for anyone that has access to our students or to the network or the data, to really be sure that they're following suit with the actual policies of the district. So how are the two connected? What are we doing within our policies world? And then how are we then educating people about this? What should we be talking about with our parents? Do we have a structure in place, as we're getting further and further into this one-to-one conversation? What are some things they should be doing at home? Do we have a laid out curriculum for our staff? The expectations, kind of the bloodborne pathogens thing, if you will. If it's just the one thing a year and nobody kind of revisits it, that's going to have a different impact than the conversations that are ongoing and educative along the way. So that's the programs world. And then we start to get into a bit more of the, has something happened? What do we do about it? So when we talk about incident responses, this is really, there's going to be a disaster recovery type of thing from your vendor. It's going to be a little hardware focused, and what do we do about that? This is really taking a look at what are those protocols that we have or should have in place if something happens? So maybe it's a data breach, but maybe it's something also around a teacher signed up for something and shouldn't have, and now something happened. Or there's a cyberbullying incident, or sexting, or really incriminating or inappropriate material on the network because Billy synced his phone with his Chromebook and suddenly there's pictures, something like that. What do we have?
Even something as simple as people negatively respond on social media. What's the protocol for response? Because so many of us are trying to use social media to tell our story, but we may not know what to do when somebody wants to tell the other side of it out in the open in our social space. So even something as simple as that is important to think about.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then looking retroactively, if something happened and there was an incident that was deemed pretty severe, how do we look back and say, well, where did we drop the ball? Did we drop the ball? Were some processes or pieces, did they break down? How do we then look back and say, now what can we learn from this to inform our policies and our programs? So circling back for that full kind of feedback cycle. And then the last domain is a little bit more technical in nature. So we're looking at technical security and access, those pieces that will be, it's probably going to require someone from the IT shop to really help address some of these pieces. And this also includes third-party vendor management. Do you have a process in place to start vetting or to continue vetting these companies? Is there a growing database of the companies that you will support and that you'll work with and work for? The bandwidth and power and infrastructure, and do you have on-site storage, and is that safe and secure? So stepping back, going through this process of looking at all of these components will give you a very strong picture of where you fall in terms of these moving parts. So it's 4 domains, and within that, 34 different data points. And so some of these I touched upon, but when we get to the platform, you'll see some of the lower level points that we didn't necessarily hit on. So next from here, I want to show you the process. How do we get this information? What does it look like? What is going to land on my plate if there is this opportunity to move forward? If we do that, how much work is this really going to be? Because we all know we all are looking for one more thing to do, right? But at the end of the day, this is work that is vital to that implementation. And our goal is to help lighten that load, to give you a clear direction and map, to say this is what you need to work on. And I think bigger picture as a region, the opportunity to work as a CESA through these things is going to come to light. When we start to talk about the moving parts here, there are opportunities through the professional development by Bright Bytes, as well as what would happen at the CESA and the work that Missy and her team would support. Coming together as a region really shrinks the world to say, how do we build this together so we're not all kind of recreating the wheel, if you will.
And ultimately, I see this as an opportunity to limit our fears. So something that I see in the tech and learning module of our Bright Bytes data is that we are struggling to do some of the things at best practice level with technology integration and implementation because we have a lot of fears around social media, privacy, data, digital citizenship. We have a ton of fear that is limiting the progress that we can make. And I see the digital privacy, safety, and security module as a way to put our fears on the table, to find, bless you, Rob, find solutions, and then move forward and have that fear subsided because we know what to expect and how we're going to react. So that is one piece that I think is the purpose of this particular module.
Great points. And this is really a formative look. This isn't going to be fear-mongering. This isn't going to be, aha, I gotcha. The goal of this really is to say, where do we need to focus our efforts? Are there trends that we're seeing across the region or across the state? There have already been a number of districts within Wisconsin that have signed up for this. This is a fairly new module for us. The work's been going on for some time. And there's actually a state-level task force that's looking at a lot of these pieces too. And Missy and I have really been talking about how do we take the work that you could potentially be doing within the CESA and inform some of that. We're seeing, again, a lot of legislation come out from a legislative lens And there is an opportunity right now within Wisconsin to be ahead of this and to inform legislation rather than the other way around. If that comes out first and districts are suddenly having to scramble to say, boy, now I've got to follow suit with XYZ, that feels different than if they can kind of turn to you guys as a force that has gone through this and say, this is what it can look like and should look like. Here's where we need help from DPI or others. And here's where, we're kind of pretty okay with that. So there are opportunities to really get ahead of some of these conversations. So now we're at the live dashboard. Missy, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the dashboard here? Because thanks. I want to make sure you see this. If you're familiar with the other module, it does have a pretty similar look and feel. There is no overall score. It's designed to be within each area where your scores kind of live here. And it goes from the gray beginning to the blue exemplary. And you'll see just kind of below this, there are recommendations right there upon launch. What's going to happen on first jump into this would be there is maybe a team or even an individual person. This is not going to require your whole district to kind of learn about this and dig in and sending things out to students and teachers. This can be kind of a side project, if you will, for one or two key people to really do throughout the year. What's going to happen is you're going to get guided through in a self-audit where each of the items is going to grade you on a continuum. So it's going to be, you're going to get an A, B, or a C, and I'll show you what that means. And then there's going to be an opportunity to upload some documentation. So you'll see just kind of some of these data points that we went through under, do you have a team? What are the safety policies that you have in place? And what are your kind of your privacy policies and all those pieces that look at the district? So I'm going to go into the first obvious one here that's kind of low and show you what this would look like. First and foremost, when you get in here, there's obviously not going to be any data. This will all be blank. What's going to happen is you're going to get guided through a series of items. So again, this is going to be a single person or maybe that core team. You can go back and change your data at any point, but you're going to be asked an initial question about, for instance, we're talking about communication. Does the team or people that are charged with this have regular communication about their own privacy within the district and safety? So we'll say yes. I have a chance to say, you know what, I'm not sure with this one. I'm going to skip it. It's going to bookmark it and let you come back to it. For this, I'm going to say, yeah, we do have a team that's talking about this and communicating. So from here, it's now going to serve up another question. It's going to get a little bit deeper into some of the criterion. So it's now saying, are we talking about ways that the education community can access this information and how we're providing reports to the administration? In fact, yeah, we do have this too. And you're seeing the data at the top grow from an awareness to a behavior. And then we're looking at finally what it looks like to have a continuous improvement cycle. So for this instance, getting feedback about annually from the wider community. We're going to say yes to this as well. And it's going to say, great. This is why it's important. And you can see the citation. Again, getting into that, why we're having this conversation. From here, I'm going to skip the documentation, but what's happening below is these recommendations are being targeted based on your responses. So as your responses are changing to this, we're saying, oh, you're not an A, you're a C. You need to get past some of these maybe plateaus or into that next level. Take a look at these, not these entry level ones, because you're doing okay with it. And what's happening also below are very specific examples tied to those key data points. So we're talking about communication. Well, here's some district level and state level examples of communication terms of service or kind of how they're talking through some of the policies that they've built up. And so for every data point, there are these specific recommendations as well as examples. And all of that is being run down at the bottom through historic notes where it's keeping a running record of everything that's happened, as well as maybe notes for one another. So Missy's in here and she's going, hey, Mr. Superintendent, please take a look at this. Or curriculum and instruction, I need you to review this, submit, and now they're going to get access to those notes. So from here, in order to take my score to the final exemplary blue category, I'm going to need to upload some evidence of this. So I can put in maybe a Google Doc and put a link, or I can actually put a specific document here and put a citation, what it is, and what the title is, and what it's tagged to will be living right here. So when you step back, you're going to have a document repository that's geared to each of these data points. So I can now get into my policies category and see my score has grown. I'm now at a C level. I still haven't uploaded anything, but now I also know some of my next steps. So I can follow that same kind of pathway into getting all of mine as close as possible to a C level and getting the documents uploaded. So just to hop in really quick to some of these other domains, we talked about some of those programs for the stakeholders. So it's students, it's administrators, staff and faculty, board members, parents, and for each of these, it plays out that same way. The A, B, C's, your supporting documents, and the recommendations as well as examples right there on the spot. I'll show you the incident responses here. So it's, again, looking at what are we doing as a plan and what are we doing to look retroactively if something were to have taken place. And then the technical components around access as well as security. So what are these kind of more technical pieces that we need to be looking at here? So then again, I can now take a look at my overall dashboard and see I've got a number of action items. I happen to have skipped some questions because I didn't know the answers to these. Now I can reach out to others within the district to help me answer this, or to say, you know, we don't have a specific response plan. We've got to start working on this. Where do we go? And that'll be easy to just hop right in here and see some templates and some workflows for that. So then it also has reports. So if you're familiar with the technology and learning one, great way to communicate out. And these will be real time. So as you're changing your data, this is all going to change as well. But at any given point in time, I can just quickly pull a report down to explain the information, how we gathered it, and so on. And then where I fall for each of these pieces at that moment. Okay. And then more about
one second.
Yep.
I'll just check and make sure you're muted because we have bells in the background and all that good stuff. So just please mute if you can. Thank you.
So there's a board for the parents, a board for the school. Report for parents, report for the school, and report for the board. Just two quick things I want to show you. One is going to be the insights where, you know, boy, I just don't know where to start. This is also overwhelming. I need some direction here. We've created new action plans. So you have them now for the technology and learning module. How can we maximize our technology budget or close the skills gaps? I'm going to skip past the early warning and leadership one, but at the bottom here are some really next steps of getting started. How do we prioritize some of this work? And what this is doing is pulling in relevant data points to this report, to this action plan, giving you a little bit of information about what's going on there and your data. So this will pull in your kind of prioritized data pieces. So yours might look different from somebody else. But right here are those next steps, those recommendations. So this is kind of about, you know, parents and getting them involved and understanding what potential risks are and threats. We get into the research on why it matters, and then some articles that you can share out to others across the district. Maybe there are some key pieces in here that you've just been looking for to kind of communicate outward, all right here and packaged for you, as well as,
Okay, Rob, so slide back down there, please.
Okay.
And click on like the insights part, please. Thank you. So the one thing that I like about this is that these insights take the work that you're doing in a technology leadership committee or a small team, and these are really tying it to student learning. And, you know, a lot of times we just think tech is shiny objects and, you know, whatever, but we really need to make sure that what we're doing with technology, both in terms of what we spend our money on and what we're integrating into the classroom, really has a positive impact on student learning. And the insights, the research, and the articles all tie this work into student learning and student growth. So that's really important. Okay, now go ahead.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Was there a question, guys?
Nope, I think he was muting before he talked to his people.
Yep. So there's also opportunities to just explore some of the recommendations. There are hundreds of recommendations in here. We allow you to kind of turn on and off if you have multiple modules, but getting into the specific data points will really give you some actionable next steps, because does feel like a whole nother job sometimes. But this is really day-to-day work that needs to kind of be taking place within the district. How can you involve others in this, and how can you share out and find some next step recommendations? So happy to explore those a little bit further. The other thing I wanted to show all of you would be, and shifting this a little to what does this look like as a CESA? What are we talking about? This would be the view that the CESA would have access to. So if we move forward as a region, and that being within CESA 3 here, Missy and her team would be able to see where districts fall on each of these. So how many are in each of these levels. So she can drill down here and see, I need to keep moving my chat window. Boy, it keeps popping up right on top of where I need to go. My overall, I can see the combined district scores and where they are, but then getting into each of the data points, I now can see who is at which spot. If I'm seeing a lot of folks really struggling in a particular area, and I'll see my breakdown by each individual school and where they are, this is going to really help inform what professional development may need to be offered. What resources can we pull together a work team to start kind of working on here, right? So this will play out for each of the data points and give the whole regional kind of look at what is happening across the districts. And again, just kind of playing out the same over each of these data points here. And also what we're really talking about here is a learning opportunity. So this partnership, if we moved forward as a CESA level, provides multiple on-site work days. So what we were kind of discussing, Missy and I, when thinking through what this could look like bringing to the CESA, we thought about maybe 4 working days where everybody comes together and starts to unpack their data and looks at each of these domains to say, boy, who's got great policies and communication channels, and who can learn from that? How can we help a single district who maybe doesn't have as many resources, doesn't have a tech director, or just really struggles kind of maintaining all of this, learn from the greater good of the group? So Bright Bytes will, with the CESA, come together with you guys. Maybe it's 1 or 2 people from each district, and really get into this work. And a lot of the outputs of this is going to come from those meetings, those work groups, where we'll have those opportunities to really come together and look at the insights that are in there, maybe craft something together. Maybe it becomes a CESA 3 artifact that everybody uses. And so we can all kind of help one another by the collective power of this group that would come together.
And your boards always ask what your neighbors are doing. And so sometimes working together really sort of shrinks the communications that, it makes them more efficient and effective if we can shrink down the number of phone calls you have to make because we have one collection of data. That doesn't mean you all have to have the same policies or practices, but it certainly gives you an opportunity to see what other people are doing and to have those conversations. So again, I think it's something that as a region, we may get further in the work if we work together.
Exactly. And so any questions right now before we kind of get into what this could look like at the CESA a little bit further?
So if you don't have questions, just tell us what you're thinking. Like, what comes to mind when you see this particular module? Todd, I'm looking at Todd thinking, I know he's got thinking in his head. What are you thinking, Todd?
Well, I'm thinking I'm hungry, but beyond that, I like the idea of the work days together. I mean, to me, that just makes a lot of sense because I know that there are people way beyond where we are right now, and it'd be great to learn from their experience, and rather than just reinventing the wheel every single district at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, if you're there, I don't see you, but I see you're muted, but Drew, you always have thoughts on this kind of stuff. So will you just chime in a bit? He's looking for the unmute. I know it. Oh, shoot. We can't hear you.
Hear me?
Yes, now I can.
All right. Well, I don't know if I've got any big wise wisdom here today, but we'll see where this goes.
Do you think you have a need for it? You've been one-to-one for a long time. Do you have this stuff in place, or what are your thoughts about this?
Well, we're constantly reviewing policies. I mean, we had a incident just last spring or that popped up again, that students doing stupid stuff. So, you know, then the board reviews the policies. So I'm not so sure programming wise. Well, I tell you, we're just using the Chromebooks and we're using them in the classrooms, and they're pretty flawless. I mean, they just work. So, I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Rob, what are some of the other programs that people look at besides their one-to-one? Like, what else? I'm with Drew. I don't know when I see programs, I don't know that I think about what other programs are out there to be considered.
Well, you have to remember, this is programs not as software. It's programs as in what is the curriculum for discussing these kinds of things. So a lot of it is stuff like, common sense. A lot of it is, we have examples. So I clicked on the one for parents, a sample program for parents and guardians. So getting into what are some things that we can start to do to have these conversations when we're going one-to-one or getting a little further into these pieces. So looking at, understanding sexting and Parents' Guide to just being cyber wise. So a lot of these will come from things that iKeepSafe has, things that are freely available. We've curated a lot of them. Some of them go beyond what is available within iKeepSafe's websites. But when we're looking at the actual programs, again, we're talking about the digital citizenship for the parents or for the staff or for the board members. How do we help people really understand what this means? How do we understand the implications, if I'm a classroom teacher, of what I can and cannot do? Should I be signing up for this type of app? So on and so forth. So
can I have my own Facebook page for the classroom? And what if I want to do that? What are the protocols to do that?
Yes,
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I can't see anybody else, but somebody else chime in. I know there are like 13 of you here. Nancy, are you there and listening? Could you give us a little heads up?
Yeah, hi, Melissa. I took my video off. I'm lounging in my recliner at home.
Oh, well, that's perfect.
It's Monday. That's great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. And I guess I'd just like to echo a little bit too. I'd like the opportunity for a couple of our staff people to get together and have these conversations with other staff people at school. I know we're really fortunate for, as a very small school, to have a full-time IT person, but and we've added a teacher who has additional sort of social media responsibilities, but they're so busy doing this stuff every day, and we do have policies and we do have discussions. But boy, if there's a way for us to look at, and I'm just scanning through some of the things that are available here in sort of a one-stop shop, it's really nice to be able to say, okay, let's get at some of that as quickly as we can, because people are so busy again, keeping everybody functioning, keeping everything operating, keeping everything online.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to take the time to step back and say, okay, are we laying out then the how-tos? And if a teacher wants to do, like you said, the Facebook in the classroom, have we been clear about, how that happens? And the more tech savvy I think we have our staff becoming, which is great, but they also just want to get out and do things right away. And I hate to be saying, well, just hang on, let's take a look at that. Let's figure out the best way to do that. Should we, shouldn't we? And it would be nice to be ahead of the curve a little bit as teachers want to start doing some things, to be able to say, well, that's wonderful. Here's the set of protocols. Just check those things off and you can go ahead and run with it. So, but I think the more people we can get together that have been through that, they'll save a lot of time for each other if they can have some of those sessions.
Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll tell you sort of what, well, Rob will tell us what it kind of looks like from what we can do together as a team, and know that there will be some discussion about how this may or may not be able to fit in with the Teach the work of the Teach Grant and whatnot. But at this moment, I really see this opportunity as, while we can do a few things through the Teach Grant, this particular work is not necessarily Teach eligible. However, if we can get this done, what we do with Teach funds will be more impactful. And part of the reason that it's not necessarily Teach eligible is because the Teach Grant is specifically for teacher professional development. And so much of the work in this particular module is for, at least initially, is for leadership and tech directors and just a very small specific team, and not necessarily teachers. Although if you want to include a teacher, we can certainly look at how we can do that, do pieces of it through the Teach Grant. So I'm open to being creative, as I always am, but Rob, why don't you tell us what this looks like from a district perspective, or from a perspective?
Yeah, and there are plenty of teacher-facing resources in here. I mean, a teacher could definitely get in here and see a lot of the sample curriculum and some of those quick wins and things like that, one could argue that it is quite teacher kind of facing in a way. It's just that the work doesn't necessarily need to come from them. But the rollout of this is, so we can work individually with districts, and we are doing that really across the country. There is an opportunity to work with you guys at the CESA level, which would include those 4 PD days. We'd stagger them throughout the year, maybe do them quarterly. If we did it with an individual district, we're not including those PD days. It would just be kind of like virtual walkthroughs and so on and so forth. So the play out of this would be, we're looking at getting a decision made by the end of September, because we have a promotion in place right now that's lowering the cost. We then would kind of get started on that as a region, and we'd say, all right, this is what it looks like to get in here. It's only going to take about an hour or so to take that initial pass through of what I just showed you with the questions, the yes, no, or skip. From there, that's kind of where the work starts. And that's where we're going to begin convening and helping people get through all this. Because there may even be people who didn't get to some of the questions or didn't know enough about it, that they need to kind of just come together and debrief. So what we're looking at in terms of cost right now, if all 31 districts say they're on board, it's about $1,000 a district. If they don't all, then obviously the cost is going to go up, because what would happen is the CESA is getting charged that same amount. So it's a little over $31,000. And if she gets reimbursed by the 31 districts, it's about $1,000 a district. If not, we'd have to offset. There could be a chance that if we said, what if every district paid $2,000, and then we took any overage, right? If maybe all the districts came in, you'd have a pot of money that you could do stuff with. Or if they didn't, you could offset that. I think your break-even number would come to 20 something that you'd have to get to doing the math, right? So I think there's ways that you can kind of juggle the cost structure, but that's what you're looking at for the 4 PD days. The support from us, the access to the module, all the updates, and there's a lot of new ones coming. Marcelly, the founder of iKeepSafe, just joined us actually a couple weeks ago. So she's now a Bright Bytes employee, and we're working on building a lot more resources. So there's going to be things that are coming down the pipe within the next few months, I promise you, and it's going to be exciting stuff. There's also opportunities for private audits and network audits, if that's something you'd like to explore. Wouldn't be part of this, but we can definitely talk about the pricing for that being offset because of this partnership.
Mm-hmm. And from CESA's perspective, we just want to bring it to you. We just need to cover our costs. We're not adding anything on. Even for my time, that's not the plan. The plan is to get this to you in as fair of pricing as possible, and working together as a region definitely lowers the costs from what you would pay if you were doing it individually. But again, I don't know that we'll be able to get. I mean, I do know we won't be able to get all 31 districts. Like, that's just an unfathomable task in my mind. However, I think this is important work, and I definitely want to make it available to you and give everyone the opportunity to do the work. The other piece that I think is really important is that the state does have the statewide task force. And again, I think we need to get somebody from this region into that space. Right now, there's only people from the East and like the CESA 6 and 7 range, which is the Appleton, Green Bay, the large school. There's not a big rural school voice on that particular task force. And I've voiced my concerns to the people that are running it. So hopefully we'll get some invites. But I think this work could really inform the work of the task force, and doing it as a region would certainly put us ahead of the game. The fact that there's a task force certainly indicates that something's coming down the pike. What is yet to be determined, but something is coming. And knowing that there will be more block grants through ESSA for technology and such is also another reason to get ahead of the curve in regards to this information, so that when those block grants do come and people are expecting more professional development in regards to technology and learning for our teachers, and there's more money out there, this will put us in a position to move forward faster. It's almost one of those things where you have to move slow to move fast, but this is work that is super important to that overarching goal of integrating tech into the classroom. So I think the follow-up for this is if you're interested in working with Bright Bytes as a region for the digital privacy, safety, and security module, if you could drop me an email as soon as possible, that would be great. We have to sort of make a decision by the end of the month. We do have a PAC meeting coming up next week where I'll talk specifically about the Teach grant, which I'm working really hard on. I'll get all the details about that, but then that might be another good time to sort of collectively chit-chat about what we've seen and how we may or may not want to go forward. But I just am here to support you, and like I said, we need to sort of collaborate and get on the same page by the end of the month in order to really get the same pricing that we're facing right now. Rob?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I think, Missy, you said you don't see the districts coming on. I think there could be a scenario where, let's say we move forward and it's a core group and it's not everybody. I think people are going to start to get wind of it and see it's not going to be as big a lift of kind of like getting staff and students and teachers all on board and taking questionnaires and all this versus just one or two core people at a district. And they're going to start hearing from the neighbors that, oh yeah, we're coming together and doing these work groups. We're coming together and discussing this. And CESA 3 is helping us build all these artifacts, so on and so forth. I think it could really get that groundswell. Mm-hmm. And the scenario could be that if enough districts kind of get to the point where you can say, it's worth it for us now to sign, you could bring on those others as you go and have them pay in. They don't have to be kind of making the decision now, but if you get the critical mass, I think it would behoove you guys to say, can we support this for a while within this group so that we hope other districts will come on and have access to this as well. So something to chew through. And then I think that makes sense. What if we send out a form to this group?
That would be great. And Rob may follow up with you as well. But like I said, I'm here to simply support you, and we just want the work to happen, and we want to sometimes lead the way. From southwest corner of the state, leading the way is not something we do very often, but in this particular area, I think that we can. And again, this is a passion area for me, and I feel like this particular module would remove several stumbling blocks for a lot of us so that the work could really move forward fast. All right, and yes, go ahead.
This is Nancy again. Could you share, there's no linkage then between this particular module and the full Bright Bytes program? People can sign on just for this module and not have the other one?
Yeah, they can technically, and it's just a quick I just toggle between the different modules.
Okay.
The purchase right now that we're talking about is for current customers. That's actually everybody within CESA 3 for you to add on the other module.
Right, and Nancy, we already have tech and learning because of the way that we've structured our digital leading and learning budget. So that's something that I prioritize so that we can really provide you all with the best professional development opportunities that tie into what the needs are. And if you remember the visioning meeting that we had last spring, we really used this data to determine which strands we were going to focus on this year. And that's how I'm building out the teach programming for the consortium. If for those people that want to join us again, we have a very solid plan based on what happened at that visioning meeting. I'm just actually working on putting the communication together. So the security privacy module is an add-on to the tech and learning, which is why I can't just purchase it, because I don't have the funds in our world at this moment, which is why it's coming to be a decision that the districts need to come together on so that we can provide the opportunity, because I just don't have the money right now to put it out there for everyone.
But through the Teach grant, we can fund then the tech learning part again.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think we could roll, at least from the district standpoint, this additional cost. You don't think that would be approved?
Well, we would, first of all, I'd need to be creative, and the professional learning part would be approved as long as we have teachers at those events. So like maybe you as a district choose to send maybe, your IT brainiac person, boxes and wires kind of person, along with a teacher or a lead tech coach kind of teacher. As long as there's a teacher at those PD meetings, then we can count that for reimbursement. The problem is, it's not really a problem. It's just a matter of how much we've decided. So we have to charge for each individual professional learning opportunity in order to make the grant reporting work. So we've decided that dollar amount is $125. So that's when we do $125 times 4 days of PD times however many districts join us, that could cover a big chunk of this if that's the route that you wanted to go. But I need to know from the region that we have a commitment to that. And I don't have the money up front until we go through, the reimbursement cycle of the Teach grant to make that happen. But I mean, it definitely can tie in. And some of the work that we've got planned out for the Teach grant, we could certainly reference this information. I will reference this information if we do it. So it definitely will tie in. It's just a matter of the startup funds that I don't have. Is that making sense, Nancy?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so our next steps, Rob and I will get together, kind of create some sort of a form. I will send out the recording to your colleagues that are not on the call with us, and I'll make it available as widely as possible. So, that would be super. So we'll send out the recording, some additional information, a form if you're interested to gauge your interest. And then I'll also bring it up at the PAC meeting when I just talk about the Teach grant. So Nancy or Drew Nancy or Drew, if you could chime in during that time, that would be super. Otherwise, if you have any questions, Rob or myself can help you.
Sounds good.
Drew, do you have a question, or are you just saying goodbye?
Bye-bye.
I'm saying bye.
All right. Thanks, folks. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Take care.
Bye-bye.